Well, hello, Robin. Thanks for completing the 2-minute child and parent education checkup from my website at mattcbarnes.com. What I'm going to do is walk through your answers to the questions that I proposed. And just to frame this a little bit, you see the two pictures on the top side of this image. Some kids are actually struggling and they're kind of sick educationally. Other kids just need a checkup. This is meant to provide you a little information so you can have a better sense of how you can proceed, some options about what might be possible if your child is sick, or if it's just a checkup, you might just need to floss more. So let's go ahead and see how long this metaphor lasts. Robin, you're a parent. You have you heard about me through the Liberation of Education Conference. And by the way, for those that are not aware of this, on May 19th, 20th, and 21st, there's a fantastic conference that helps families learn how to take a greater sense of ownership of their education. And we're also doing a lot of focus on entrepreneurship, because entrepreneurship is one of these wonderful spaces where kids are able to learn, not because someone's telling them to learn, but because they're internally driven to learn. And so you'll learn more about that at the conference. So look forward to seeing you there, Robin. Let's continue on with your assessment. So you have a child who's somewhere between the age of 10 and 13. You have other children in the home, again, somewhere around that same age. So maybe they're twins, maybe they're just closely stacked as our kids were. That's important to know, just because if it's the oldest child, oftentimes the younger children will follow in the wake of that oldest child. And so that's why I asked that question. Your kids are close enough where they may be kind of dealing with some similar issues as well. You're in a traditional public school. Again, public, private, charter. I put these all as the same model. Even though you may be a private school or public school, it's the same model of education where, again, the child comes in. There's been a curriculum that's decided for that child long before anyone's ever met that child. That's the model that is traditional K-12. Big question here. How much decision-making authority does the parent or child have over their learning? You say almost none. Now, this puts off a bunch of yellow flags for me, definitely potentially red flags as well. If the child doesn't have ownership and the ability to decide and direct their learning, that's going to lead to burnout. It's very, very common. The areas that the child has interest and curiosity, wonderment and faith, and then you answer that it's hard to say because you feel that school sucks the passion out of him. He definitely loves basketball. Interestingly, I'm working with a family right now. I think he's 12 and is an excellent, excellent basketball player. And we are creating a learning journey around the subject of basketball. So there are lots of ways to skin this cat. But if you want your child to be curious and a lifelong learner, then he has to learn how to lead his own learning. That'll be some of the things we'll talk about a little bit more. How much of the child's learning is in their area of curiosity? Almost none. Again, this to me is this signals to me that you're like the young boy up on the left here with the ice pack on his head. When a child has very little ability to learn in the areas of their curiosity, it leads to all sorts of burnout, discouragement, a sense that learning is not a joy, and learning actually is one of the most fun things one can do, but only if you're able to find the areas that you have interest in and then learn those. Now, here's a question I added that I don't think you saw this, but I want to talk through it briefly. I just added it, I think, yesterday. Who should be responsible for a child's learning? Oftentimes, these are the different options that we talk about: the school district, the school, the parent, the teacher, the child, or the community. A lot of times parents will say it should be all of them. And yes, that's of course true, but I'm looking for who is the most responsible. And the answer that I'm looking for here is not the parent, not the teacher, not the school. I'm looking for the child. The child should be responsible for their own learning. That, to me, is one of the biggest disconnects between our current system of education and where we're going to be going into the future. If the child doesn't own that, then they are essentially blaming other people if they're not learning, and that leads to all sorts of problems. I hope you see that. Let me continue on. This is getting a little long, but I hope this is helpful. How does the child respond to failure? So option one on the left is views learning as an opportunity, or views learning as a problem to be avoided. You're more on the latter. Again, that's a challenge and a problem going forward, because we're moving into a world where failure is going to be a common dynamic in our lives, whether it's job failure or we're applying for a job or trying to start a business. Resilience comes from being able to see failure as a learning opportunity. And again, schools teach failure as a problem to be avoided, so that he might be getting some of this perspective from his school. Is the child growing more curious as they get older? You say probably not. Okay, again, another area where I would hope that a child, as they are growing into adulthood, are starting to see more opportunities to learn and start to become excited about the innumerable ways that a person can learn. Again, part of an area I would argue is a potential problem to be focused on. Is a child motivated to get good grades? Now, you say definitely yes. Now, ironically, this is an example of how normal is broken. I grew up thinking that good grades and motivated to get good grades is a good thing. In truth, being motivated to get good grades teaches a person to avoid doing hard things, to fear failure, all of these things that are contrary to what the future is going to demand of a young person. So on this question, I'm actually looking for someone who is not interested in getting good grades. They're interested in learning, and there's a big difference between grades and learning. We can talk more about that too if you'd like. What's the child's relationship to technology? So like most kids, he uses tech to consume content rather than to produce it. That's pretty normal, but again, an area of concern. Here's another question that I added that you didn't get a chance to answer, but I'll walk through it with you. How much change in society do you expect in the next 10 years? So that's in the area of technology, work, social issues, etc. From unimaginable change to little change. Let me move my head out of the way so we can see this a little bit better. I found that parents who think that change is going to be somewhat subtle, they don't think that education needs to change as well. But the parents who say that, boy, change is happening so fast, I can't even imagine what it's going to look like in 10 years. Those are the parents that are usually more open to the idea of really changing the game of how learning happens in the educational life of a child. Because the faster things are changing, the more that what the child learns today is going to be irrelevant. And in fact, we see that a ton in school right now. Most of what one learns in school is just irrelevant. And it certainly will be irrelevant in 10 years. So the key is to raise a young person who is a learner, who's constantly learning, who's constantly flexing, and constantly adjusting to the changing dynamics within society. Okay, the next question. If the child had a personal problem, how many people would they feel very comfortable asking for help? So 3 or 5. And again, this is one-on-one help. This is actually super important. Your child's got contact to other people who he can ask for help. And that's hugely important. You want to grow that number as best as possible, and you can be very intentional about that. And then related in a given week, how much one-on-one time does the child have with someone you'd consider caring and competent? So 1 to 2 hours, not bad. Again, this is an area you want to keep pressing on more and more so that young person has the opportunity to learn from a community around the child. And one-on-one conversations is going to be most valuable, especially as he's moving into this teen years. And a lot of confusion in the teen years oftentimes. Which would you prefer in a child? You're not sure between hard worker and naturally smart. That's actually a really smart answer, a really thoughtful answer, I should say. We don't want someone who just thinks that they're smart and that things come easy to them. We also don't want someone who just grinds and works hard, even in areas that they don't find value or joy. So I'd love to talk more about that with you. Which would you prefer in your child, a critical thinker or a rule follower? Critical thinker, definitely, excellent. Which would you prefer, insatiably curious to a straight-A student? Excellent. These are exactly the right answers. Which would you choose for your child, a clear purpose for their life or an elite college degree? Sometimes I'll also say a high-paying job. Oftentimes parents get a little conflicted about that, but you're answering the way exactly as I would recommend. How do you feel, how well do you understand how technology is reshaping communication, work, and education? You say you're very informed. That's fantastic, but it's moving so fast that I don't know of anyone who's actually that well informed anymore. Even people in the tech industry, we've got a good friend who's in tech. He doesn't know what's happening. He doesn't know where it's moving. All he knows that it's reshaping everything in ways that we can't predict. So it's great that you're informed. That's maybe part of what's driving your questioning and this actually completion of this assessment. Is the child's education complete? You say definitely no. Again, I think that's all driving this. Does the child have a individual on paper, on purpose plan for learning? If the answer to that is no, you're not unusual in that regard, mom or dad, who's ever writing this in, or I guess Robin, so your mom. Most parents assume that the school is going to take that responsibility. But as I'm trying to point out, the school and the future are misaligned. So the parent now has to begin to build their own plan for learning with the child in partnership with the child. All right, last couple questions. If yes to the answer above, you didn't answer yes, so we're not going to move. We're going to move on that. Here, let's go ahead and dive into this a little bit. My son complains that he does not understand why he's forced to learn all of this information and do homework. He does not see the payoff. I have a hard time responding because I don't feel that what he is learning is setting him up to be an independent thinker and engaged citizen. He is currently in a high-performing charter school. Okay, so when I talk about schools, there are schools like a high-performing charter school or a college prep school. I'm arguing that we need to really rethink what that actually means. So high-performing charter school usually means someone or school that's really driving down on the child. Here is what you must learn today, and you need to learn it quickly so tomorrow we can learn something different. That is a very different world than where that child is going to step into in 10 years. The new world is not going to ask the child to do anything. The child is going to have to be self-driven and an independent thinker, as you articulate, because that's what adult life actually looks like, you leading yourself. So these are the things that I understand exactly where you are. I would love to talk to you more about it and maybe get you plugged into some of the other families, particularly the family who has a young man who's interested in basketball. And then I'll put you on my email list. So I hope this was helpful. Here are a couple next moves. So the first thing I often ask or encourage families to do is to start with a conversation with your child. Now, it sounds like you've already been having some of these conversations, but what is the child's, what are the areas that the child actually wants to learn about? You mentioned wonderment and faith and basketball. So I would ask the child this summer, let's do something different. How about we really do a really interesting learning journey on these two areas of wonderment and faith and of basketball? And what does a learning journey look like? It looks like using the topic of interest to go deep. And so in wonderment and faith, that would be studying, reading, watching videos, talking to people, talking to clergy about faith. And in basketball, it would be the same. We would be talking to a lot of people in the basketball space on all types, on all subjects: marketing, finance, legal, physical training, coaching, stats. All of the subjects that are taught in school can be taught through these two subjects of wonderment and faith and or basketball. So a learning journey, an individualized learning journey, is one where the child is actually developing that themselves. And then the parent acts as the kind of guide and the coach that walks alongside the child. That is what I'm arguing is a next move for you. Ask the child, how can we begin to build out more learning in these areas of interest, particularly over the summer, because the summer is the best time. You don't have the school complicating your life to the degree you do normally. The best time for you to start to experiment with what it might look like to have a self-directed learning journey that's driven by the student with support by the parent. And if you start to get a list of some of those things he's interested in learning about, then that becomes kind of a bit of your playbook on how you can begin learning over the course of the next summer. So at the end of the summer, possibly, you might be in a groove where you're seeing so much learning, the child is getting so much more excited about learning that you might decide to stay in that model into the next school year. And of course, we can talk more about all that. If you'd like to discuss this more, I'm going to send you a link for a free conversation. All the things that I do are free. Thanks to Dave Ramsey. He's given me the financial freedom to do this. And so if you'd like to talk further, just set up a time. And I hope this was helpful. Keep hugging on your boy. Keep recognizing that your child has things of interest that he's interested in. But if he's not able to find those and to study those and learn about those, that is going to lead to burnout, discouragement, dissatisfaction with learning, and potentially, I would argue, a lifelong avoidance of failure, a lifelong avoidance of learning, a lifelong avoidance of taking risk, and the future is going to require all three of those things. All right, well, that's enough. That was a lot longer than I had planned, but I hope this was helpful. And again, I'll send you information about how to get in touch with me for free conversations if you'd like. Wish you the best and good luck.